You are widely regarded as the founder of descriptive translation studies. Is that a fair description, do you think?
No, it's not. I don't think that anybody is the founder of anything. I don't know exactly what you mean by it, but if the meaning is that I haven't invented the term, that's for sure, because I used the term invented by James Holmes.
Okay.
Maybe it was not even invented by him, but he gave it the first publication.
Okay. What?
And I don't think the terms are that important. I mean, they're more like catchwords.
All right.
It's easy to hang a phrase or an expression to a person, but whatever you do, linguistically or non-linguistically, it is based on something else that somebody else did before, and that somebody did before was already based on something else. And you could, if you want to, trace it back as far as possible. Mostly people do not do it. It's very convenient for them to find I almost said a scapegoat.
Let's not get a scapegoat. Let's try to get what your most important contribution is to translation.
I'm not sure that I'm the right person to answer it.
I think you could have one voice among many.
So where are the other voices?
Are we wrong then to attach you to descriptive translation studies?
To attach me to as such, it's not wrong, but to talk in terms of founding or even inventing the term, this is definitely wrong.
Good.
The rest is maybe debatable, but it's not on the face of it, it's not wrong.
Mm-hmm. What about achievements like turning translation studies towards the study of norms, initiating a more sociological, quantitative approach in translation studies?
Here I agree.
Can we put your name on that?
If you add a few other names...
We can do that, yes.
Before, at the same time, and a little later, because we really didn't work as a group, but there was a kind of a group of people who were lucky, or maybe they created it, that they were also personal friends and liked to talk to each other and compare notes.
Do you mean in Tel Aviv, or more generally?
No, more generally. What somebody called the Low Countries, and in the Low Countries they included not only Belgium and Holland, but also Israel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's in a sense a low country, but it's not one of the low countries.
You have some heights as well.
Yeah, but the heights are not very high.
Okay.
But maybe they're higher than in Holland, I'm not sure.
I think so. I think they would be. We're talking now, in recent years, of a sociology or sociologies of translation, or a social turn among many other possible and past turns. What's your take on that?
I think that's another exaggeration in order to make life easy for other people. I think that the sociological turn started in the 70s. Because once you talk about norms, you talk about sociological facts. Maybe we didn't have very elaborate sociological theories, so which means that at that time we didn't read Bourdieu or Luhmann said. Luhmann, he published most of the things a little later anyway.
Okay.
So maybe one of the things that we managed to do, but not enough, is to get some professional sociologists get interested in translation and do some things. I don't mean Bourdieu, who didn't learn anything from us, but Abraham Desvan and Johan Halbroen, and not very many, Giselle Sapiro, who joined the two traditions, and I think they showed to the satisfaction of sociologists that it can work. It's not always to our satisfaction.
Yeah, the work seems to be more on book production and translation systems.
Which is very important.
Yes, but it's part of what we do in translation.
But this is a way of shifting the focus more than really changes. Because people tend to exaggerate when they say, for instance, that the norm approach ignored the translator. It didn't ignore the translator, it put it in a place where it was mainly subject to social and cultural constraints. It didn't work so much on the individual, and this is really something which is missing. You intended to ask me later on about it, but
you told me once that people were functions in systems, and that's a rather provocative statement.
It's not a provocative statement, but it's not doesn't exhaust what people are. What I just wanted to say now is that nowadays I think that we are on quite a good road in terms of sociology of translation. We are on very bad terms with psychology of translation. We know very little about it, and psychologists are still not very interested in it. And whereas translation students normally do not swim in psychology.
Yes, yes.
I really want, because maybe this is some egotistic thing. I'm very strange in that respect. At my old, quote-unquote, age, I'm now interested in learning from others more than teaching. I'm a bit fed up with teaching, but I really, when I choose lectures to go to nowadays, it's in things that I don't know about.
Sure. Let's go back to how you got into translation. And the standard question is, what were you doing when you were 24, 25, 26?
You mean academically or professionally?
Both, I guess.
Because you asked what I did to get into translation and not into translation studies. And in fact, I did get into translation before I ever got into translation studies, unlike many other people in that period, but more like people today. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, there are very many people coming, or maybe even statistically speaking, most of them coming from on the basis of actual translation, or part of it, or an aspect of it, to become interested in research. In brackets, I would say, I sometimes have the impression that not so many of them are not really very interested in research per se, but they are made to write a dissertation, and the dissertation is very good. But many of them will start with a dissertation and will never go on beyond it.
Now you avoided the question. What were you doing when you were 24, 25?
I was starting a family.
That's a legitimate occupation.
It's a legitimate occupation. Forgive me if I say it. I regard it as the most important thing that I ever done.
Sure.
My children, my grandchildren did not come when I was 24 years old.
I hope not. How did you get into translation studies then?
So you're not interested in how I got into translation. It's enough for you that I said that I got it before.
No, you avoided that question, so I'm asking what you might want to answer.
I was adding some color to it.
Good, yes, that's fair. Why translation?
Why translation? Because there was one of the bad economical situations, periods of calamity, economically speaking, was in Israel, a local one in the 60s, and I didn't have a profession. I came out of a kibbutz. I knew how to plant avocado trees and pick up bananas, but that's about all. But as a member of a kibbutz, I was also the editor of the newspaper of the kibbutz. So I thought I knew something about journalism. So I looked for a job which had to do with writing in journalism. I found a position, an assistant's position in a children's weekly. And the editors of the children's weekly made me start translation. Not for the first time. I did a few months of translation in photography. Mm-hmm. It was very strange. I didn't know very much about photography, and I didn't know very much about translation. But these two episodes made me interested in translation. I didn't go and study translation because there was no possibility of studying it in Israel at that time. Not even in a diploma course. It all started in the 70s. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure whether I would have chosen such a course even if it had existed. Mm-hmm. So I studied as a member of a kibbutz who didn't really was not interested in professional career because he could go on planting avocados and picking up the fruits later on. I went and studied Hebrew language, Hebrew literature, some linguistics, and then a teacher introduced me to Naida's book. Not to the field. He introduced me to the book because he thought it would make a good reading to a non-professional who wanted to learn some semantics, because it was practical.
Towards the science
of
translation?
Yeah. This is the first book I've ever read about translation. It was Naida's. It was not an easy book for somebody who didn't have a background in semantics or in translation studies. And then I decided that it was really interesting, and there was a lot to do there, especially after the second book that I read was Catford. And I could see that I could go in more than one direction. And then came Itamar Evenzor's doctoral dissertation, so I saw that there was a third possibility of doing it. And then I started looking for kind of a supervisor, because the system in Israel was and is individually based on an agreement between the candidate and the supervisor, not in a program. The program is individual. It's sketched by the candidate and the supervisor. It has to include a number of contact hours, but it doesn't matter in principle which ones, as long as it is agreed that it bearing on the topic or on the method or on both. So
I'm intrigued by something else. You've worked on many aspects of translation.
I don't know most of them because I've always been doing some linguistic work as well, but it's all in Hebrew.
In Hebrew, yes. I'm aware of that problem. You have a critical mind that enjoys turning doxa on its head, enjoys taking common opinion and asking if the opposite is not also true. And a lot of what we now call descriptive translation studies was based on that, surely. If we go back to an age of prescriptive studies, somebody comes in and says, well, it should not be prescriptive.
So you want me to apologize now? Or?
No, I'm interested in that strategy. It seems a playful strategy rather than a pessimistic, critical, or sarcastic strategy.
You could ask my students in the first years. I stopped doing it in a sense, but you have Miriam Schlesinger, and I could tell you about the classes that I had when she was a student of mine on, let's say, for instance, language play games. Well, the students had to not only analyze the play, but first of all to invent one.
Is there something particularly Jewish in that, as an intellectual strategy, or?
I don't know.
No?
It's
just intriguing.
Historically speaking, I'm very much interested in history of Jewish culture, but in daily life, I try not to make it a problem, because otherwise I would have had so many problems that I couldn't live with. The situation is very complicated. Sure. I mean, by birth I'm Jewish, and there's no problem about it. There are people who are in a problem, and I'm all in favor of if they want to regard themselves as Jews, let them be Jews, even if the religious law wouldn't accept them. It doesn't interest me. But I don't have this problem. But on the other hand, I don't want to throw away or to ignore it, or to throw it away, this part of my identity, because otherwise I throw away, for instance, all the family that was killed in the Holocaust.
Yes, of course.
They were killed because they were Jews. So I cannot say now I have nothing to do with Jewishness. But to tie it all up, make it the motive for everything else that I did, I don't think so.
No,
I think that in my culture, in my old age, I also like many people, started seeing a therapist to spend a nice hour once a week in general talks about everything else. And one of the first things she told me was that I had to stop being so self-critical. So if somebody completely stranger had this impression after 1 or 2 weeks, there must be something to it, but I don't think it has anything to do with my being Jewish.
No, it might be being an intellectual.
Maybe.
What should we be doing? What should we be doing in translation studies? Where would you like to see young researchers working?
In the same mood, I would say, I would like to see people do whatever they like to. See, I realized it that I became an intellectual or academic in a period where I was lucky to get a job without too many commitments. So I didn't have to show that what I was doing had any practical implications. I can see that nowadays things are different. So but I can afford to be large because I know that the narrowing down will be done by others anyway. So why should I contribute to it? So from my point of view, for NIAUS, they can do sociology, psychology, politics, feminist studies, gay studies, whatever, if it's of interest. I am much more interested not in the material or in the theory. I think I already told you, you used it already, what I told you, that I was not really interested in theory. I was much more interested in research, and the part of research, except for the descriptive studies themselves, which interests me more, has always been the methodology and not theory. I needed some theoretical pinpointing in order to be able to draw the methodologies from, but I was really not worked, maybe even not worked enough on the theoretical side of it. And this is one of the reasons I think that people have difficulties in reading what I've been writing. I realize it now, but I'm not very good in popularizing things. I never saw it as one of my goals in life, or things that I was very much. I mean, I'm capable of teaching. I'm a rather good teacher, people say. And our family is a family of teachers. My father was a teacher. My son is a teacher now. It's not a very popular occupation, but they like it, and we have all done it very well. But I envy people like yourself, and especially Andrew Chesterman, who really know how to present a complex idea or complex setup of things in a manner which is relatively easy to follow by others without simplifying it too much. Because there are people who, in order to be popular or popularizer, they simply flatten out all the difficulties. They are simply not there because. But if you don't encounter them in the beginning, I wonder when you will encounter them. When you start working then you find yourself despairing because the difficulties are bound to pop up one way or another at some time.
Professor Gideon Toury, thank you very much.